Welcome back to Leah's Leaves. We're going to up-pot some tomatoes today. I'll give you a quick glimpse into how my hot peppers are doing after that saga too. Do you remember how I had to plant my peppers like 3 times this year? So the first batch of like a whole 72 cell tray, I'm so excited to tell you about it. I wet my plants. Are these right here. That's it. That's it. There's like 7 plants. And that's all that survived the first debacle. The second time I had a little bit better germination, but I also didn't try planting many fancy peppers. So I sort of stuck with my tried and true ones. Some of these are eggplants, some of them are peppers. They're doing okay. These were planted in late February. That first group was planted in early February. But this was my most recent planting. And I went back through, I pulled out all my hot peppers to try them from scratch one more time. And look at this. Blank, 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 blank. So clearly I was working with some old seeds. I suspected that. A lot of these came from seed swaps. And you don't know how other people store their seeds. I like the seed swaps because of the variety and the sort of mystery of it. But the downside is swapping seeds may or may not result in viable seeds. So that's all right. It's a risk. And here's the tray we're working with today. There are some tomatoes, flowers, and herbs in that tray all mixed together. I've got a little station set up, and I'm going to bring you along my process for an easy, cheap way to up pot tomatoes. First thing is, if you make your own compost, awesome. Or if you have access to some, that's terrific. For me, I don't compost here yet. That's just like, my fantasy gardener self, which I will grow into that. But I had other things to correct in the garden this year that took priority. So don't worry about the brands you're looking at because that's not important. As I've been out shopping, getting my groceries, getting garden supplies, occasionally I would just pick up an extra bag of potting mix for this purpose. It didn't even matter what, because I'm going to fertilize the soil and amend it, and all the soil I got will be healthy. Now here are 2 different types of soil. Haha, just kidding. They're actually soil from the same bag. And what I did was I sifted using my garden sieve and sifted it into my big pot here. And so this is the sifted soil, and this is the clumps of the same bag of soil that collected in the top of the sieve. I also have a collection of just cheap plastic cups from Dollar General or wherever you can find cheap plastic cups or whatever containers you want to reuse. I like to have some uniformity to the cups because these are getting prepared for my plant sale and just for, display purposes and to make it easier to mark everything. And have some uniformity on the table. So I'm going to use the same kinds of cups. I poked a few holes in the bottom of each cup, just using a pair of scissors. Now once I have my soil sifted, and I have the chunks separated out, and I have drainage holes in my cups, an option at this point is that you could pre-moisten your potting mix. I'm not going to do that today because I'm going to keep adding to this over and over again. And I just want to work efficiently. So I'm going to plant out all of my tomatoes and then water all of them in at the end. But that's an option that you have. You can pre-moisten this before you start filling the cups. Totally up to you. So the very next step is I'm going to take a handful of the coarse material that I sifted out like this. And I'm going to chuck it in the bottom of every cup. That is perfectly good soil. And the tomatoes will put down some roots in it and get established. But with the coarser, chunkier material, it improves aeration at the bottom and drainage. And that'll just prevent any risk of getting waterlogged. It will help if you accidentally overwater the plants or if these cups are left out in the rain too long and need some drying time. So that's just a little insurance policy. Plus, it's great filler because this is the good stuff. So I'm going to use this so that it doesn't go to waste and minimize the amount of the sifted soil that I actually need for the process. Okay, once all of my chunky dirt is in my cups, I'm going to take a cell out of my seed cell tray. These are Paul Robeson tomatoes, and there are 2 of them that germinated. I'm going to separate these out, and then I'm going to take off these, what are called cotyledon leaves. They're the lowest leaves on the plant. They are the only leaves on the plant that at the moment don't resemble a tomato plant leaf. These were the very first baby leaves to come out when that seed germinated so many weeks ago. And they were the first leaves to begin the process of photosynthesizing for this plant. But now that the true leaves, these leaves at the top that actually look like tomato plant leaves, are here, those cotyledon leaves no longer serve a purpose and they don't need to stay. Now I want to bring this in. I hope my camera will focus. If you've never seen a tomato plant up close, you see fuzzy hairs along the stem. Tomatoes have an amazing, miraculous ability to grow roots all the way up their stem. So when we transplant these, we're not going to plant them at soil level where they were planted. We're going to plant them in a taller cup all the way up to where that first true leaf starts. And we're going to cover soil all the way up, and roots will grow all the way up that plant. So when I go to plant this, I'm going to take that original root ball and we'll put it all the way down in the bottom of the cup. And you see how much of the stem, there's a good, what would that be, like in 2 inches, maybe 2.5 inches of stem, that I can put dirt all the way up so that it looks like this. Soil all the way to the top. And that root ball is all the way down here where my thumb is. And then all that stem now has soil around it. So it'll begin producing roots. The second to last step before we do anything else is label the cup. You can poke a label in. I just use a garden marker that is an outdoor marker that is fade resistant, and I write the name right on the cup. That's the marker I love. I get them in packs of 2, and they last the whole season. My garden gnome came to help me for this last part. Holly's assisting me. Okay, so after the cups have had their holes poked in them, and the soil has been sifted, and the coarse material has been put in the bottom of the cups, and the cotyledon leaves have been removed from the tomatoes, and the soft soil has been put around the roots of the tomatoes, and the cups have been labeled. The last step is a light watering, and this time we're going to hit them with some fertilizer. But because they're young, tender, sensitive plants, you don't need a strong fertilizer and you don't need a lot of it. As they mature throughout the season, they can receive more fertilizer. Today, we're using my favorite starter fertilizer, fish and kelp. This is essentially just rotten fish guts and a bunch of seaweed that's been soaked and sieved through water. It's a dilution, and it's a high concentration here that you dilute in water. And it looks all foamy. It smells nasty, like death. Like rotting, dead, stinking fish. But it is the best thing you can give your plants. It has a low NPK. It's 2-3-1. So there's some nitrogen boosting in it. That's what the nitrogen does. The potassium helps root development, which is what the plants need right now more than anything. And the potassium, or the phosphorus is the lowest because that's your bloom booster. And these plants aren't established yet to need a lot of that. So that'll come later. You want to add phosphorus and potassium and lay off the nitrogen as your plants mature and when they start producing blossoms. But in these early stages, they don't need all that extra. We'll call it like muscle milk. They don't need all that. Right now, this is just a little tender boost to get them established in their new cup home for the next 2 weeks until the plant sale. I want to say a word about, earlier I showed you the potting soil. I'm going to post a link below in the description of a video that Luke Marion from MI Gardener posted recently, sort of demystifying and demythifying potting mixes. He has such a good teaching on that. Basically, you're being lied to on the labels, and everything they say is in your bag that's going to be extra special for your plants isn't even necessary. He says, he teaches you that, you know, one bag of potting mix can serve 13 purposes, which is a little bit of amendment or understanding what you're dealing with. So please watch that video, especially if you're a new gardener and you're trying to figure out like what kind of soil to use. Or if you're like me, you're gardening on a budget and you don't want to spend $13 a bag for 50 bags of soil for your season because you just can't afford it. My potatoes are looking good. Those are red Norland potatoes growing in the Tidy Cats buckets. I'm growing them as early new potatoes. Have some bok choy that's going to get potted up. Some flowers. Here's nasturtium. And here are some dwarf tomatoes that are going to go in hanging baskets or small pots around the property. Over here I've got some sweet peppers. These are all my sweet peppers. More herbs. Some beautiful purple basil is really popping. And the dill. Over here I have some flowers for my moon garden. Some straw flower and nicotiana. And then in this tray I've got all my corn, okra, cukes and zooks, and squashes. And they're all popping too. And my jugs did really well. My winter sown jugs. This is one that I actually had to pop the top off of because we got warm days the other day and they were gonna fry. I was gonna have fried lettuce. So these are gonna get potted up in the green stock this weekend. Anyway, that's what's growing here. Everything smells like dead fish. But those tomatoes are gonna love it. So I'm gonna get back inside and keep potting up tomatoes. I'm learning a lot sharing it here, and I hope you'll come grow with me. Bye.